Hi, folks. Democrats in California are proving once again that when they say protecting democracy, what they really mean is protecting their power. See, Sacramento Democrats are pushing forward Gavin Newsom's authoritarian plan to scrap the state's voter-backed independent redistricting commission and let politicians redraw California's congressional maps mid-decade. Yes, the same kind of gerrymandering they cry about in Texas. And when asked who's behind these new district maps, Democrats suddenly start playing dumb, with one laughing it off, saying voters don't need to meet the chef when they go to a restaurant, as if secrecy is just fine when the recipe is a cooked election. Another Democrat kept parroting, "This is the most transparent process," while refusing to say who actually drew the new map lines. Even former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who helped create the independent commission, warned that Newsom's scheme could kill fair redistricting nationwide, something that Newsom says this could ironically lead to somehow. Backwards logic there, you see, from Gavin. The irony couldn't be thicker, folks. Democrats claim they're saving democracy while shoving it through the shredder.
Schwarzenegger was in favor of this whole thing. He's publicly come out against it. You just said that you talked to him about it.
Yeah,
were you able to convince him?
No, I wasn't looking to convince him. I was willing to express gratitude and respect for him because I supported his effort years ago. And again, I was very public in supporting efforts to make sure it wasn't repealed. And I want him to know that we're maintaining it.
Oh, you are.
And I also want him to know if we are not successful with this, there'll be no independent redistricting in this country. It's all over.
You're killing it anyway.
He's trying to rig the election.
You're rigging it too.
In plain sight.
You're doing the same thing.
You don't have to, Republican or Democrat. What the hell is going on?
That's what we're saying.
It's not about differences of opinion on the big, beautiful bill. We can disagree on that. You may love billionaires more than you love people getting food stamps.
Oh my God,
That may be your
shut
jam.
up.
That's the better approach. You may love $4.1 trillion in new debt, just sacking the next generation with higher interest rates. You may love the fact that the consumer price index went up last month and then today wholesale prices went up in July 0.9%. You may think he's crushing it. You may love crony capitalism. You may love the fact he's got a $400 million private jet with $1 billion of federal money backing it up in the big, beautiful bill that will allow him to retrofit it and then give it to himself through the foundation at the end of his term. You may be for a third term.
Don't you do the same thing through nonprofits?
It is about that. Because it is about that patterning up. Recognize. He's about wrecking this democracy.
So are you.
This is about authoritarianism. He doesn't believe in the rule of law. He believes again.
Neither do you, dude.
That's what this is about. That's what's different about this.
What an absolute crook, and shameless about it too. Gavin is openly floating the idea of gutting California's independent redistricting commission, the very body created to stop politicians like Gavin from redrawing districts in ways that helps them consolidate power. And he's now trying to spin all of this as saving democracy. Let's call it for what it is. It's a naked power grab. The man who spent years lecturing the country about the evils of gerrymandering is now testing whether Democrats can get away with their own thinly veiled coup. That's why the ballot measure Democrats are pushing is technically temporary, but conveniently it covers the 26 midterms, the presidential election in 28, and the 2030 midterms. Dirty Gavin is betting he can use it not only to undermine Trump's presidency, but to pad his own chances if he runs for the White House in 28, and then to lock in whatever Democrat majority exists in 2030. At that point, you can be sure that temporary will quietly become permanent. And the irony couldn't be richer. Newsom's justification is that if California doesn't rig the maps first, Texas might just do it. That's the essence of modern Democrat politics, folks. Principle free, ends justify the means, break the rules before your opponent even thinks about it. And the exchange with Schwarzenegger is especially telling because Arnold helped create the California Independent Redistricting Commission back in the 2000s after it passed with overwhelming support from California voters who wanted to stop exactly this sort of partisan map drawing by Democrats. Now Arnold is sounding the alarm, saying if Democrats succeed, it will end independent redistricting everywhere else in the country. And he's not wrong. Most common sense people agree Gavin's move will set the precedent for other states to abandon fair maps altogether. And Greasy Gavin's response? Well, he shrugs it off, calls Trump the one rigging elections, and then blames Republicans for the same sins he's caught red-handed committing and admits to on camera. This is projection at its finest. Accuse the other side of the very thing you're doing. Hope the media runs interference to lend you a helping hand. Now, folks, I think it goes without saying that independent redistricting was never championed by the Democrats because they love fairness, but because it cut against Republican power. After the 2010 census, the GOP controlled a wave of state legislatures and used that to draw maps in places like Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, and that locked in Republican seats even when Democrats won more statewide votes. That became a rallying cry for Democrats at the time. They said, "End gerrymandering, save democracy," they would screech. Groups like Common Cause, the League for Women Voters, and big Democrat donors poured money into ballot measures for independent commissions in states like Michigan, Colorado, and of course, California. And Democrats were happy to hold up California's commission as the gold standard because at the time, it only hurt Republican legislatures around the country. Now the tables are turning, and not in favor of the Democrats, because California has been losing, as of the last few years, population by the hundreds of thousands. Last year, in 24, Trump made huge gains with Latino, Asian voters drifting to the right, and Democrats have been bleeding registration to no party preference or outright Republican. On top of that, the next census won't allow illegal immigrants to inflate California's congressional seat count, which means California could lose more representation in Congress. So thus, suddenly, an independent commission is inconvenient. So now the same Democrats who once called these independent districting commissions sacred are now plotting to scrap them because when the rules stop working in their favor, they can't fix the ideas. They just have to change the system to suit them. This moment ultimately exposes a hollowness of the Democrat moral vocabulary, folks. Democracy no longer means free and fair elections. It means Democrat control. See, transparency means refusing to answer who drew the maps while repeating the word like a spell.
Who exactly is responsible for the maps? Who do we tell California voters drew these?
Well, so the maps have been posted on our website since 8 o'clock yesterday. The lines are very clear where people can go on and observe and see what we're doing.
You didn't answer the question, lady.
Many counties and many districts are not getting touched at all. So,
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. My question is, who is responsible for the maps specifically? Who do we let California voters know are responsible for the maps that they are being presented with?
I mean, I think it was a collaboration.
Yeah, there were several people involved.
Who specifically?
Answer the question.
I don't have the full list right here with me, but we can certainly get that to you.
BS.
These maps are transparent. They're
Are they?
The names of the people. The names of the people, the organizations. I mean, Governor Gavin Newsom promised that no special interests or this would be transparent. This would not be done in a back room.
We're definitely.
So we're trying to ascertain in this very short amount of time that you have to deliberate this, who exactly are the maps responsible for?
There's a lot happening very quickly, and the folks that were drawing the maps went back to the Independent Redistricting Commission's testimony and what they heard during their time when they were deliberating this.
You didn't answer the question, lady.
Time to do the work that they needed to do.
Answer the question.
These on the Voting Rights Act, and we're looking.
The fact Democrats claim this is a transparent process done in the interests of California voters while refusing to say who actually drew the maps is peak Democrat authoritarianism dressed up as good governance. The reason Assembly Elections Chair Gail Pallorin can't answer this question here is because the truth would expose the lie. These maps aren't the product of open deliberation. They're stitched together in back rooms by political operatives who know their party is bleeding voters, losing population, and facing tougher races in once safe territory. Independent redistricting used to be their golden standard when it hamstrung Republicans. Now it's suddenly too independent when Democrats themselves are at risk of losing seats, especially with a census count that no longer lets illegal immigrants inflate California's influence in Washington. This evasiveness isn't just about maps. It's about a political culture that prizes control over accountability to the public and power over everything. Folks, I think it goes without saying that when leaders can't even say who's responsible for drawing congressional lines, it tells you everything about the state of their so-called democracy. It's not about the voters. It's only about the incumbents and how they can secure more power for themselves. These Democrats don't care about you. They hate you. They see you as an obstacle to their consolidation of power. That's why they hide who's really drawing the maps, why they spin lies about transparency, and why every rule they set for you magically bends in their direction. The entire game is about securing control, even as voters flee their party, even as demographics shift, even as California loses seats in Washington. Democrats never adjust their policies to earn your trust, folks. They rig the system to erase your voice. If they actually cared about the people of California, they would have solved the homeless crisis instead of dumping billions of dollars into nonprofits that made the money evaporate. If they actually cared about Californians, they would be taking care of our roads, which in LA, they're completely eroded. They would be funding our police department to make sure that we're not getting smash and grabs every single night and people can walk outside without having to see a junkie overdosing on fentanyl. If Democrats actually cared about Californians, they would be cutting all the red tape that makes it impossible to live in this state. The red tape that makes it impossible to own a business in this state, makes it impossible for you to renovate your house if you live in this state. That's made it impossible for the residents of the Palisades to rebuild their homes. If Democrats actually cared about Californians, they would ensure that our reservoirs are filled up before fire season. They would ensure there were controlled burns throughout the year so that you don't have brush left over laying around for decades ready to implode an entire section of town into smithereens and people losing absolutely everything. Folks, if you are a Democrat, I beg you, please do some soul searching. Look within yourself. These folks don't give a flying fuck about you. Pardon my language, but I don't know how else to get through to some folks who vote blue no matter who. You're not helping yourself, not helping your state, or not helping your children or your grandchildren. If your plan is to drive this beautiful state into the ground like a Venezuelan banana republic, keep voting Democrat because that's the direction we're going. And look, folks, if you have any sort of suspicion or skepticism about the political decline that's causing California to erode from within, well, here is the exact same elections chair, Gail Pellerin, silencing a Republican during a hearing for merely asking questions about the redistricting.
I have allowed plenty of time for you to ask.
Please.
I have allowed you plenty of time to ask your questions.
It took me a long...
I have allowed you plenty of time to ask your questions.
As the presenter
Assemblymember Berman, you may close.
Madam Chair, please.
For my Republican
Madam
colleagues,
Chair,
I have
there are
a long
so many
close
more
prepared,
questions.
But I am going to forego that.
We do need to know.
Just ask for an item.
Madam Chair, we
Mr.
asked
Berman,
you.
would you be willing to answer my questions that I have prepared?
I am following the direction of the chair on how the committee hearing will proceed.
Mr. Berman,
We have
can you
to be
explain to me
we
how
have to be
spending
respectful of people's
$250 million
time.
on the special election provides a greater public health benefit than constructing egress routes for our mountain communities?
Okay, Mr. Tanipa, you have been asked to stop. We are done.
Mr. Berman, can
with
you
the
explain to me how
questions and the
$250
deliberation
million
of this
in this special election is more important than the Californians who recently
Mr.
made
Tanipa, you are out of
priorities
order.
when they are overwhelmingly
Mr. Tanipa, you are out of order.
Mr. Berman, can you explain to me how spending $250 million...
Wow. Wow, they just cut his mic. And there you have it, folks. Evidence is clear as day that Democrats do not believe in democracy as they claim. Imagine silencing a sitting member of state legislature for merely asking why taxpayers should cough up $250 million for a rushed special election that has a specific legislative goal of disenfranchising California voters while our state drowns in a multi-billion-dollar deficit. Cutting off his mic wasn't just about time management, by the way. It was about control, about shielding a rigged process from scrutiny. This is how power operates, folks, when it feels untouchable. Questions are threats. Debate is dangerous. And accountability is treated as obstruction. So what we're witnessing here isn't just one committee chair shutting down one Republican. It's the broader culture of the Democrat Party where democracy means complete submission. Transparency means you better shut up. And the only voices welcome in this conversation are the ones already marching in lockstep. Now, there was another very telling moment in this hearing where the same state assemblyman, David Tangapa, asked what was the thought process around this redistricting effort, and the response he got, wow, you got to hear this one.
We're looking at the maps. How did we take into consideration communities of interest? You know, were they done to protect race, religion, all the ideologies that we have right now to make sure that we're protecting the voters of California. Was that done in that consideration?
It's a partisan gerrymander. That's what we're talking about here.
Wow.
Partisan politics is what we're talking about.
Folks, this is no longer about saying the quiet part out loud. There is no quiet part anymore. Democrats have gotten so comfortable ruling California like a one-party authoritarian state that they don't even bother disguising their corruption anymore. When asked whether these new congressional maps were drawn to protect voters, their response is just straight-up bluntness. It's a partisan gerrymander. That's not transparency. That's just straight-up arrogance. And the reason they can say it so casually is because they know there's no real check on their power. Republicans hold so few seats in Sacramento that Democrats don't have to consult, negotiate, or even pretend to care about opposition. This is what happens when political dominance calcifies. Accountability straight up disappears. Institutions become rubber stamps, and the people themselves are treated as obstacles rather than constituents. The brazenness of that admission reveals a deeper truth about our current moment here in California. Democrats aren't defending democracy as they claim. This isn't about standing up for voters. It's about redefining democracy as permanent one-party control and daring anyone who has the guts to do it to challenge them, because as we've seen, they will silence you. And who knows what else they'll do with you, because they have one party, Venezuelan style, control of this state. And folks, I keep using this allusion to Venezuela, and it's never been more appropriate. Venezuela at one point was an oil-rich, prosperous country, and socialism and communism entered, and it destroyed the country to the point where many people who live in that country have completely left the country to go to Brazil, many to America, and neighboring countries in Latin America. We're seeing a very similar trend in California. We literally have all the greatest businesses, all the greatest industries, every natural resource you can think of here available to us. And yet, Democrats have been running this state into the ground. There's a mass exodus for a reason. We are on the verge of a collapse. And unless something is done in the next midterms, we can't even wait that long, in this special election, unless something is done to stop Democrats in this upcoming special election on November 4th, they're going to destroy this state and make it unrecognizable. Imagine Detroit, an entire state. That's what we're on the verge of, folks. So you have to register to vote. You have to register Republican. If you're not comfortable doing it, then sure, register non-party preference so you can tell your friends you're not a Republican. But when you're in the voting booth, you have no choice, folks. This is existential. You have to vote so that there is at least balance in Sacramento. Democrats cannot be allowed to have a supermajority for another year, because this is how we get this self-interested politics that is not representative of the interests of Californians. We pay more in taxes in this state than every other state. Yes, California is a donor state, but the vast majority of the money that we pay into California, that I pay into this state and this county, gets wasted. It disappears. It goes into nonprofits, many of whom are friendly with Gavin Newsom and his wife, many of whom have his wife on the board. I want to see that stop. I bust my ass to build my own business and to live in this state, as many millions of Californians do. Should not be complacent with the hard work that you do. The hard-earned dollars that are in your pocket, that are in your bank account. You should not feel comfortable with giving that to politicians who have no interest in representing you and solely want to exploit your labor, enrich themselves, and to expand their control over your life.
So did this committee meet then to draw the lines? I mean, we're just trying to ascertain who exactly is responsible for drawing these maps at this point.
So the criteria has remained the same from the CRC. 76% of the districts remain the same, and that is what Californians will see. There were many folks, stakeholders, who had an input on the map drawing process, but ultimately this is up to the decision of California voters, whereas...
You didn't Answer the question, dude.
Respect. We want to make sure that there's a nationwide Citizens Redistricting Commission, but the reality is we are in an emergency. And this is
what?
An emergency response. We're giving Californians over 2.5 months to review these maps and make a decision on whether or not we move forward with this constitutional amendment.
What is it? So is the Senate Elections Committee, we drew these maps. Like, you're ready to say that?
The Senate Rules Committee put these maps, the census tracts, onto the website.
So legislators drew the maps? Can we say that to our viewers?
Again, this was from CRC's criteria.
But who was looking over CRC's criteria to create the maps? Was it Paul Mitchell of Paul Mitchell Strategies?
It was input, again.
So you're refusing to say who drew the maps, which is the question.
It was testimony that was given to the CRC.
By
and again,
whom?
we're remaining consistent, making sure we're keeping interests together.
Zero transparency.
Which was important to voters. We're making sure that we are respecting the Citizens Redistricting Commission. Therefore, we see that only 76% of the voters remain in the district that they will be looking at when they review these maps. And that is what we're doing different from Texas.
You want to know why Democrats are so obsessed with Texas redistricting? Well, because they funneled tens of millions of dollars, over $35 million in 2024 alone, into the so-called Blue Texas Initiative, backed by heavyweights like George Soros, to turn the state purple and reframe it as a presidential battleground by 2032, according to the Wall Street Journal. For decades, Republicans held every statewide office in Texas, but Democrats bet on demographic shifts like increased Hispanic and suburban voter turnout to make inroads in the state. So in essence, Democrats built an entire political machine around demographic change through mass illegal and legal migration and voter registration drives in Texas. And then, with one redistricting cycle, Republicans slammed the door shut, wiping away those gains and securing the map for years. That's why California suddenly becomes the hill Democrats are willing to die on. They know their national relevance is tied to protecting California's bloated congressional delegation, one already propped up by population counts that for years were padded by non-citizens, as we've already discussed. Strip away all of that in the next census, add in the reality that California Democrats are bleeding voters to the GOP or no party preference in the state, and the Democrat supposed fortress looks more like a crumbling castle. So when Senator Sabrina Cervantes dodges a question of who actually drew these maps, when she repeats, "This is the most transparent process," like a broken record, it's not transparency. It's desperation. Democrats are clinging to California not just for state power, but because they know if they lose their stronghold here, they lose their grip on Washington. And with it, an entire generation of cultural and political dominance built on bad ideas, failed policies, and institutional capture. So the question you have to ask yourself is simple. If the Democrats in charge can't even tell you who's actually drawing the lines that will define the power behind your vote, what else are they hiding? If transparency now means silence and democracy now means one-party control, how much longer will we keep taking their words at face value? This moment isn't just about maps or elections. It's about whether you still believe the system actually serves you or whether you're finally willing to see that it's being engineered by Democrats to control you and your ability to control your own government. The louder Democrats shout about saving democracy, the more you should wonder, whose democracy are they really trying to save? And what does that cost to you? You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.